This is A Silent War Within, the podcast dedicated to confronting the unseen mental health battles carried by our first responder and healthcare heroes. This show is about real stories, real struggles, and real ways to survive the storm and come out stronger on the other side. For too long, stigma has kept you silent, but this is your space to bravely break that silence, share vital insights, and build a community where your well-being truly comes first, because your service deserves unwavering support.
Welcome to A Silent War Within. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Makayla will be joining us shortly. She had something come up, so she'll pop in just a few minutes. So that will be fun to have her just pop in the middle of a conversation. That's kind of her MO anyway. But today we have somebody that I've been looking forward to interviewing for some time. We've had schedule conflicts. We've had all kind of things. We've had to reschedule. But I'm so glad that she has taken the time with us. Everybody meet Amanda Dozanti, and you go by AK, right?
I do, yes. So I grew up a hillbilly, and my first name is Amanda Kay, and it just sounds way cooler.
So I always start off with kind of the same lead in. I want to hear your story. I want to hear about where you came from, how you got into law enforcement, and then from that, how'd you get into this mental health thing and kind of some of your journey in that?
So I started my law enforcement career at 19 years old doing undercover online investigations. So if you remember like the Chris Hansen To Catch a Predator, it was like that, but in real life and without the entrapment charges. So we were doing that. I was the decoy and did that for a couple of years. And at that point, I was getting my undergrad and I was still like undecided. And that pretty much made the decision for me that I was hooked. I needed to go into law enforcement and figure out how to make this thing into a career. So I went to the academy at 20, finished out my degree and started with the sheriff's office as soon as I graduated and did the bulk of my career there on road patrol. And it was a whole lot of fun until some things caught up with me. And in 2015, I went from being Officer of the Year to completely burned out and leaving full-time law enforcement. So 2 years before I started my law enforcement career at 17, I lost my best friend to suicide, and I never really dealt with that. And there was a lot of other things in life in general, right, that I just hadn't dealt with, and it all caught up. So at that point, I became a criminal court victim advocate, and I did that for just under 5 years. And while I did that, I went back and got my master's in criminology with a focus on victimology, which is where things started to turn towards this mental health thing, because I started to learn about what trauma was and that it wasn't exclusive to victims and it wasn't a dirty word. And at the same time, I was doing a 10-month yoga teacher training because slowing down was just not my vibe. So I started to learn about the physiology of stress and trauma, and all these different like alarm bells and connections are going off. And I was like, wow, there's so much here. Hello.
Hi.
So at that point, I really started diving into like the neurobiology and the physiology and all the ologies and trying to figure out what I can do to heal myself, and meditation and a ton of different things, reading books and going to classes. And I left that job in 2020. And in 2021, I created Lifesaver Wellness. And through all of my own experience and the need that I saw for mental health training and education in the first responder world, I started developing curriculums and training at agencies and coaching individuals, which morphed into speaking all over the country and writing books and where we are now. And then at some point in there, I became a wife and a mom, and that's what my actual day-to-day looks like. But so that's the nutshell version.
You sound like you're a plate completely full kind of person like I am. I always joke, and it may not be a joke, but I always say that it's my trauma protector. It's what I do to keep my mind off of things. I'm just constantly busy, and through years of counseling, I've had to realize that that's what I've done all these years is like, I'm just trying to get away from it all and keep my plate very full.
Hmm.
but I enjoy the full plate so much that I've continued that even after finding out, that's what I was doing. But I enjoy having a full plate and having a lot of coals in the fire, as they say. So that's just kind of my take on it as well. So was there a particular moment or a call that made you have that pivot, or was it just the investigation as a whole where you were frontline and then you went to, okay, there's a need here for something more?
It was a couple different things, but leaving full time law enforcement, the the pivot there, because I had multiple critical incidents over the years, and some I dealt with, some I didn't, and the pivot out of full time was really my now husband kind of starting to witness because we were newly dating at the time, and he started to witness what it was like behind the scenes, not just like, this is cool, my girlfriend's this badass cop. It was like there's layers behind the curtain. So long story short, he just looked at me one day and was like, you don't have to, doesn't have to be this way. Like, you don't have to live like this, if you don't have to do this job if it's affecting you this deeply. And I never considered that, because I took an oath and I took that very seriously. And just him saying that, because you can't read the label from inside the bottle, and
Mhm.
he could see it more clearly than I could. And so just him giving me like that little permission, um, a little insight, I was like, huh, okay, I guess I can, maybe I can do something else. Wow, what a thought. I never considered that. So that was, the pivot out of law enforcement. But I think the pivot into doing something more focused on the mental health stuff was, I had about 5 years out of law enforcement and had really seen a lot of changes within myself. And just those baby steps helped me so tremendously that I was like, I need to build on this. I need to bring this information back, because this is all stuff that I never knew. Nobody ever told me. I didn't understand it. And now I almost feel like I have a duty to serve in
Mhm.
this way. So there were two major pivots there.
That's Your story is so amazing, and I've heard it. I've heard pieces of it throughout your content and looking at your websites and things like that. But I really think you have such a phenomenal story. And amazingly, we don't have just a ton of law enforcement individuals that are like, yeah, I'll come talk to you. I've reached out to a few and they're like, I don't know. Do you think that that's part? And one of the things I've heard you talking about is warning lights on the dashboard, if you will, like some of the things that we start to see in ourselves and in others. Can you go over some of those and tell us what the warning lights are, since you've done this extensive research and work on this in particular subject?
Yeah, yeah. So ironically, it's all things that we've normalized. It's all things that we just are like, oh, well, that's part of the culture. That's part of being a cop. And it's little things that we don't think about, like irritability or not being able to concentrate, lack of sleep, not like poor eating habits, because we're just not taking care of ourselves. We're focused on the mission. We're not focused on ourselves, which there's value in that. But also, if we are what's driving the mission forward, then it's not gonna go right. Muscle tension, breakdown of relationships, losing your purpose, not being able to communicate what you're feeling and thinking, because when we're in survival mode, we don't have access to the parts of our brain where words are born. So people will say like, well, just talk to me, just tell me what's going on. And it's like, I literally cannot form the words, because my brain has no go-go juice in that part of it. Like I need. So frequent infections and illnesses, chronic pain that is unexplained, but we're not putting the pieces together. Um all of these things that they're so overlooked, and we just attribute them to something else. Well, my low back pain is because I've been wearing this duty belt for so long. Yeah, well, also, you're not drinking enough water, you're not stretching, and so you're marinating in your own cortisol and adrenaline all day long. Of course, your muscles are going to be tight. Um, those are just some of the things to look out for. Reckless behavior, being careless, being complacent. The three big indicators of burnout, if we're going to go into like research nerd mode, is exhaustion, mental, physical, emotional, almost to the point of like a soul fatigue that You don't really need a definition for, but you already know the definition. The cynicism, so that skepticism, suspicion, mistrust, that kind of thing. And the last or the third pillar of identifiers is the fancy way of saying it is low self-efficacy, but it's truly just not feeling like you make a difference anymore, not seeing the impact that you make anymore, which can be really damaging on that soul level. So those are some of the big red flags.
So I have two questions here, and you mentioned it just briefly. Why is it so easy for us to dismiss these?
Because this is the way it's been for so long. When we're being trained by seasoned people who are already experiencing this, and so we think it's normal. We've just normalized it all.
And then the other part of it is, why are there not more people out there like you, like me, Makayla, and others that we've had a chance to interview who are educating about this? I feel like there's a deep lack in education in our EMT programs, our fire schools, the police officer training academy. Like, when they talk about mental health, it's 4 pages. It says, you know, there it is, and you move on to the next thing.
hmm
So, like, why is there not more training for this, do you feel like?
A couple different things. I think when I was in the academy in '08, the biggest thing they said was you're going to have to compartmentalize work, at home, and
Mhm.
home. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds like magical. Let's do it. Until I realized that we are one whole human with one human experience, one brain, one body, one nervous system. And to think that we can fragment ourselves and be two different people is not sustainable. It can save your life on a shift. But if you are also being told, don't take your work home with you, where are you supposed to discharge this stuff? So that's one thing. We think that that's going to work, but it's not sustainable. The other thing is there are a lot of people out there talking about this right now and educating on
Mhm.
it. I will say a lot of them are like check the box people that are either still in the job and haven't actually taken the time to do deep research. They want to be in peer support, they want to be involved, they want to help, and they mean well, but they just don't fully understand. And so they're just kind of like scraping the surface. The other thing is, it's really hard to tell people who have never experienced what we've experienced, what they're going to go through and how to deal with it. Because I have talked to groups that are very young in their career and they literally they're like deer in headlights. Like, okay, yeah, lady, whatever, you'll deal with that. I'll deal with that when it comes. But they have no clue what I'm talking about because they haven't experienced it yet. And so I think that's one of the biggest challenges is how do we prepare them for things that they don't even know, they have no context for yet. Because ironically, I find it much easier to talk to the seasoned people who have been there than the people that are just coming into it and have no idea what is ahead of them.
And so, AK, you talk a lot in your content about like these band-aids that first responders use, caffeine, nicotine, you name it. And personally, I'm not a type of person who thinks those things or taking your PTO, taking your vacation time. I don't think those things are necessarily going to cure all your burnout. Kind of what's your hot take on that?
Yeah, hot take on that is take your PTO, but also that is a Band-Aid. It's going to maybe let you get like one good night's sleep, but that's not moving you forward, right? That's not doing anything to mitigate the backlog of the 7 years that you've been exhausted and burned out. It really all starts from resetting your nervous system. And so, I am a daily caffeine drinker, but I used to rely on it. Like if I didn't have it, I was getting massive migraines. I couldn't function. And it was wrecking my body and my physical health. I was in top performance, but my actual health was very low. I had shingles twice before the time I was 30. I had to have my tonsils taken out at 26 years old. These are not normal things. I was getting rushed to the hospital for digestive issues. So if we're not taking care of our body, which is the foundation for, everything that we do, we're not truly going to be able to overcome that burnout and reset from it. So making sure that and I know people are going to roll their eyes, drink your water. If you are dehydrated, it is like, yes, all of our water. But if you're dehydrated, it does so much more damage to your system than you realize, to the point where it affects so many things through a domino effect that it could mess up your hormones. And then you're like, oh, well, I feel a certain way, so I need to just take some ashwagandha. And it's like, well, okay, let's maybe just drink some water, And I hate to sound, kind of like a prude, but honestly, if you're not taking care of the basics and the ordinary, you can't expect to be extraordinary. So, a lot of these habits that we develop, the caffeine, the alcohol, the, making questionable life choices, all of these things are contributing to your burnout. They might make you feel better and numb out in the moment, but just like, if your vice is buying things on Amazon, yeah, that's going to make you feel great when you have a new package at home every day, but your bank account in the reality of it is not, going to be sustainable, and it's not actually doing anything to move the needle for you in the long run.
As this is a psychological safe place, I feel very attacked.
Well,
I love
okay, so
you. It's all out of love, I promise.
it's out of love. And two, people who are addicted to nicotine, let's just go there, and caffeine.
Also feeling attacked.
Sorry, Kevin. So I'm glad my parents don't listen to this podcast because I used to vape, right? And when you vape or do something worse than vape, um, you're always wondering, like, especially if you're at work, when's the next time I can go to the bathroom and get a hit off my vape? Or when's the next time I can go out to my car? Or that caffeine starts going down at 3 o'clock and you're just gonna do 600 more grams of caffeine at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know? And that's not a sustainable way to live. I feel so much better. I stopped vaping, so no nicotine anymore. I feel
Good for
so
you.
much better. That crutch is just gone. When you think about like having, oh, when's the next time I'm going to get to go to the bathroom and do my vape, or when's the next time, all that's gone. So that noise, at least in my head, is one thing that I feel like is way better.
Yes, and I think so often we're looking to these things to serve as a distraction, but distractions destroy actions. And if you really want to be that extraordinary person and you want to serve your community and be the best you can be, you got to get rid of the distractions. You got to stay focused, and you can't rely on things outside of you to make life better for you. Praying for an easier life and focus in and lock in and build the strength that it takes to make the hard possible.
I was just going to add to what you were saying. I think that, you know, I work nights, so mental resiliency is a thing. And I feel like you are tougher than you think you are. And once you break that mental barrier of like, I can't do this, I can't work nights, I can't sleep during the day. Once you like set your mind to something that you want to do something hard, you can do it. You're a healthcare worker, you've done harder things. So if you set your mind to, I want to quit smoking, or I want to quit drinking, or I want to limit my caffeine intake to 400 milligrams a day, you can do it. It's not
Yeah.
impossible,
Yeah.
and you're gonna feel so much better when you do those things.
Yes. And I think that sometimes we think, well, I'm not that tough. I can't really have like that fierce attitude. And I'm like, to hell you can't. You would do it for somebody that you are called to serve without blinking an eye. So why can't you do it for yourself?
So, little personal story, and Kevin knows this, too, but, just a little vulnerable moment. Dylan's my husband's grandmother, was diagnosed with lung cancer, and then,
Sorry.
during that same time, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer, and
So
so
sorry.
and both of those people smoked. And so I knew, like, every day I put that vape to my lips, I knew, I was like, that's gonna be me. And you are out here, not practicing what you're preaching, and you're downing on cigarettes and you're downing on whatever, but you're doing the exact same thing, if not worse. So I
Oh.
really can't, like, when I see nurses vaping, like, especially you go in the med room and it smells like cotton candy butthole or something, I'm like, y'all, it's making you feel worse. I hope you know that. I like get on a soapbox for like 5 minutes, but that it is a band-aid for burnout, and it's no amount of nicotine, caffeine, whatever you do is gonna curb that.
I have been in healthcare for a very long time, and I don't think I've ever experienced a cotton candy butthole.
You
But
go
thanks
to a
for the
med room,
reference. Thanks for the reference.
go to a med room and an ER, and you are gonna smell cotton candy, raspberry, whatever butthole. It smells so bad.
The way that her southern accent says the emphasis on the whole is what's funny to me.
Yes,
And
yes,
like they
for
have a
sure.
camera in there. I'm sure they're not watching it all the time, but if they wanted to see you vaping, they could.
Jesus, Makayla.
That's so
But anyway,
funny.
off my soapbox of that. We'll get back on topic.
Well, but, sorry, but I said but, it just all came right coming back to me. But truly, the problem is sometimes when we know better, but we're not doing better, then it creates like this canyon of shame in between the two things. And then we have to crawl out of that and kind of get tough with ourselves. And I think sometimes that's why people don't like to hear what I have to say because you can't unhear it. And if you know better, then you're like, oh, dang it, now I got to do better. And if you don't, you're going to feel worse, but truly adds to it. So when you do know better, you have to do better or it just makes it 10 times worse.
Yep. And
But good,
another thing, yeah. I mean,
I was just going to say,
another.
but good for you for taking action on it.
Oh, thank you. I will say it was very hard. My husband, we
Good.
went on vacation and I was trying to quit, and I thought that was the end of our relationship. I was like, we're not gonna make it. It was in Gatlinburg. I was like, we're not gonna make it.
You and my husband both. He has not been nicotine free since he was a teenager. And we spent 2 weeks in Aruba and he decided that he was going to go cold turkey from America to Aruba. It was after day 7, we were almost okay, but it was rough. Like, I
And
don't
on
know why he
top
decided to do it
of
then
traveling being stressful, travel's one of the most stressful things you can do.
with children, small children. Yeah.
That's crazy. So let's talk a little bit about systematic versus individual responsibility. So
Yep.
I'm really big on this. We actually talk about this at the hospital that I'm at. They're really good about this. When an accident happens, when a patient event happens, when anything happens, most of the time it is a result of a breakdown systematically. It is
Mhm.
not an individual. Do you want to
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
So burnout is equally, and I write about this in my book, Beat the Burnout, it is equally the responsibility of the employer and the employee. So you have a responsibility to take care of yourself, right? But also, sometimes you can do everything you can possibly do, but if you're not in a good work environment, it's not going to be sustainable for you. And there are 6 main factors that the employers are responsible for mitigating that. And I'm actually going to refer to my book because sometimes when I'm put on the spot, I forget. But community, having a good, safe sense of community within your agency is huge. Workload is another one. Making sure that the workload is kind of evenly distributed or fairly distributed based on what the roles are. Values. So making sure that the agencies are actually practicing what they preach and not just, if your motto is justice, integrity, and service or something like that, and there's no integrity and things are unfair and you're not actually serving people, then, people feel that like there's a dissonance there. Reward is another one. So not just showing up for a paycheck, but actually like acknowledging when people do a good job, both formally and informally. Fairness, so making sure that nepotism is not a thing because that will break down trust really, really quickly. And then the last one is control. So how much control do the individuals have in their performance, in the decision making, and or do they have too much control? So is there somebody leading the situation? So those 6 factors are, if they are not in place, people don't do well in those work environments. And they all of those factors sound like soft sideline things, but when you have them as a foundation of your workplace systems, it allows you to, in the moment when shit hits the fan, to actually show up as a human, because all of the other things are taken care of, right? The values are there, the control, the fairness, all of those things are systematic. You can fall back on that as a foundation, but you don't have to worry about those things when things happen. You can just show up as a human being, which is truly how people feel valued and connected and thrive, essentially.
So I've worked at companies that do both. I've worked at different companies where I've worked at one hospital that there was a completely different culture behind like accidents and when things happen, when patient harm, happens. Um, and I've been at a hospital where that is a fireable offense where, no matter what happened, the person who was the nurse in charge or the LNA or whoever was going to get fired, you know. And then
Jeez.
I've also worked at hospitals where things happen and we come together as a group and we talk about opportunities and things that went right and how to prevent things in the future. And I will say, the hospital that I worked at, and this was early on in my career, where anything, if a patient event happens, the nurse or the LNA in charge of that patient was going to get fired. There's a lot of hiding that comes into that. I know this wouldn't be your line of work, but the body cam might get turned a little bit or whatever. Like you want to hide what really happened. And that led to a lot of distrust in management because they felt like they couldn't go to their managers and tell them they made a mistake.
Yep.
And then where I work now is really great. If we have a patient event, it's completely transparent. Hey, you're not going to get fired. We're learning from this opportunity. So people who deal with this in the future might not have this happen again. This is what happened. You made a mistake. It's okay.
Yes.
Mistakes happen. Let's learn from it. You know,
Yes.
does that kind of thing even relate to like police force and kind of what you do?
Oh, yes, all the time. Because if you feel like, especially in law enforcement, you're under a microscope by the public. But if you also feel like you're under a microscope with your administration, that is so much added pressure, and then you don't feel supported on the back end. You go into survival mode. I can't. So I got out before we had body cams, but I can't tell you the number of times that I was like looking around my cruiser, wondering if it was bugged, just to see, like, just are they listening? Like, and that having like that undercurrent the entire time you're at work really is a huge distraction, and it doesn't let you fully focus on what you're doing, and then it starts to affect your performance. It starts to affect how you show up for not only yourself and your coworkers, but the people that you're serving, because you're like, oh, if I make the wrong move, am I going to lose my job? And nothing throws you into survival mode like not having a means to support yourself. If you're not feeling supported, that hits at a human level, because we are designed to be tribal, right? And so we have to know where our role is. We have to know how we fit in and that we belong. And if we don't feel that, then it's, Survivor than like the TV show.
It's true. I like that.
Absolutely. So, AK, you wrote Beat the Burnout first, and excellent book.
Thank you.
I would love for you to put that on an audiobook because I think that would be amazing to listen to. I'm a big audiobook listener, so hopefully that puts a bug in your ear to put it on audiobook. But that's
Well,
just
this
from
fancy mic was purchased because December, that is my project, is to finally get it on Audible.
I got you. No, I love to listen to books, but some of the things you talk about in your books are really heavy and really not easy to hear. And we've talked about some of those things here, like, and you even mentioned it. Some people don't like to hear what I have to say, but Beat the Burnout was literally kind of a guide for a healing process and structures reflection questions and debriefs, and you kind of take it all into one, and it really works together when you put it with tactics and those questions and the debriefs, and I really loved that part of it. But from that particular book, before I move into your new book, what's something you want people, a truth you want people to pull from that book? If you had to put one big sticker on the front of that book that says, this is what it's about, what is that for you?
Connection is everything. Being able to be connected to yourself allows you to be able to be connected to other people. And early on, you have to be connected to yourself because I kind of like reverse engineer the burnout. So you have to be willing to connect to yourself and be willing to be honest with yourself. But then as the healing journey goes, there comes a point where you kind of plateau and you realize you can't do it by yourself and you need to connect with other people. And so little by little, the connection looks different, but that's truly everything. And then then when you get to the next level, then it's like, okay, now I have to be connected to something much bigger than myself. And then you start to look at your spiritual wellness and moving into something more powerful.
And one of the other things you did in that book, and as well as with some of your content over the course of the time you make content, is you have referenced these micro challenges, these small, manageable invitations to incorporate new habits. So, what's something simply we can do to handle some of those micro challenges that we're given?
Just do them. So those actually
Some of
morphed
those
out
were
of,
tough, though. Some of the
yeah,
micro challenges, you're like, I don't want to do this.
yeah. Well, it's a challenge.
That's why it's called that, I guess.
Yes. So actually, those morphed out of my one-on-one coaching. I give my clients daily micro challenges, and it's just little things to kind of keep you on track. Because if you're going to therapy once a week, it's an hour a week. What are you doing all the other hours of the week? So it's
Hmm.
just the consistency is everything. So I don't know if it's a matter of managing the micro challenges or just doing them, and stop trying to talk yourself out of them. Stop trying to
Yeah.
find a way to wiggle around it because our brains are really good at that. If something's uncomfortable, we're like, how can I squeak past doing this thing?
Hmm.
And it's like, you know what? Just dive in. That's where the growth happens.
For those people who have never heard of you or read your book or anything, it kind of explain what a micro challenge is. What would be an example of something you would ask your one-on-one people to do?
So, like for my one on one people, it might be today, micro challenge is to find three people that are typically overlooked and just tell them, I hope you're having a great day. I see you. You're doing a great job. So, like a janitor or housekeeping or a cashier, somebody that would typically you would just kind of walk right past, something like that. Or it could be, hey, I want you to sit outside for 10 minutes and watch the sunset and listen to the birds. Or just there's so many different things. A lot of them are mindfulness things. Some of them are just things to kind of stretch you and make you grow and uh sharpen your skills on life, I guess.
I love that. You know, a lot of people think that the barrier to entry for like well-being and like mental health is so high. You know, I've
Mhm.
got to get a therapist. That's expensive. I've got to get this yoga mat or whatever. That's so expensive. I got to get A, B, C, D. And you really don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
mindfulness is a low barrier to entry. Just thinking about what you're doing and being mindful about it every day.
Yeah. And that's what I think, when I was first coming into this space, people said, you got to read The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And I was like, cool. That is a very, very dense read. And it's an amazing book. It's one of my favorite books, but it is not a starting point. And that's part of the reason why I wrote Beat the Burnout is because I know that when we are in a place of survival mode, our capacity for complexity in our brain is severely diminished. So I gotta, like my buddy Doug White said, sometimes brain not work so good. And you gotta you gotta dumb it down until you build that capacity and that for that complexity. And that's
Yeah, I
kind
think
of what
that's
I
good.
did. Even as you read Beat the Burnout, the first couple chapters are very simply written, very
Hmm.
simple concepts. And as it goes, the concepts get more nuanced and more complex. So it's stretching your brain as you're going. I mean, I put a lot of strategery into that book. So even the things that you don't see that are working for you are in there. So yeah, that's
And
so
it's
true.
really interesting to me how some of the things, not just in the book, but just everyday tiny things that you can do increase your well-being so much, increase your mental capacity so much, and fill your cup so much. Just the exercise of being kind to people and being nice to people, it makes you feel good. It
Yeah.
makes you naturally feel good. And I love that those little micro challenges are so achievable. A lot of
Hmm.
times people will put a title on something to get people to look at it and to read it. And when you get there, it's not quite as easy as it was made to sound, but a lot of your micro challenges are really easy to complete. My problem was I inwardly was like, I don't want to do that. It wasn't that it was hard. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And you have to make yourself do some of these things. So I appreciate that about the way you wrote the book. I appreciate that about how much mindfulness you yourself put into the book and how you strategized some of this. I don't know if is strategery a word? You're
No,
clearly smarter than me.
no. I mean, strategy, but I love to say strategery because it just sounds a lot more fun.
It is fun. I did
That sounds
enjoy it.
fun.
So if somebody like a first responder that's been in this kind of burnout place for a long period of time comes, reads your book, whether they're a police officer, fire, EMS, whatever, what do you hope their life looks like on the other side of the book?
My hope is that they're able to see more clearly how the way that they've been doing things maybe hasn't been serving them, and how easy it can be if they just choose to move the needle just a little bit, how the little things can really easily become big things. And just like you said, how achievable it is. But so
Mhm.
often we get so stuck in these cycles and this autopilot because we're exhausted and we're cynical. We don't think anything's going to work. And it doesn't even matter because I'm not making a difference anymore. So all of these things that are the major identifiers of burnout rattle around in our head and convince us that no matter what I do, it's not going to work and make a difference anyway. But if you can just give yourself little bits of effort here and there and be consistent and be frequent about it, that it is so much easier to overcome than you think. Now, that is not to say that critical incidents and major traumas don't need more. They need clinical oversight. They need something more. But in order to kind of come back from the burnout, it's just really about being intentional. So I want them to have more clarity. I want them to be able to recognize when they're slipping back into their old habits and know exactly what to do to pivot in the moment and in their life. And truly, then just to be able to live well and take good care of themselves so that they can be connected and fully present in their lives and enjoy it, because you don't work hard for 50 years to only enjoy it at the end of the race. You want to be able to enjoy
Mhm.
the whole journey, and that's the point. So just to be able to have that clarity and truly understand it so they can catch themselves and then pivot when they need to.
Just hearing you talk about that, and there's a lot of people that I work with, I don't think that they know that they're burnout. I just don't think that the older generation before my generation, that working hard when no one's watching is just kind of built in the back of their brain.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the previous generation, I think we're the first generation talking about emotional trauma, PTSD, mental load, things like that, because the older generation, they just work themselves to death.
Hmm.
And that's the group and community that doesn't take their PTO and their vacation time. And then when they quit, they die. We talked about that with,
Yep.
a note from dad. And
Yeah.
what would you say to some of those people who that are not in our generation that say, I don't have burnout. I just do a good job and go home. I'm a good nurse, firefighter, paramedic, whatever. What would you say to that?
Do you enjoy what you do? Do you enjoy your life outside of work, or are you living to work? Because there's nothing wrong with hard work. Hard work is good for you. It's great for your brain. Most of the time it's good for your body. It's great for a sense of purpose and a sense of personal accomplishment, but it's how you carry the weight of it. Are you carrying it like it's a burden? Are you carrying it like, "Oh, just another day, just grateful to be vertical?" Like, okay, well, how is that the way to, like, is that really the best way that you can live? do you believe that there's something better or a better way to show up every day? Do you want to wake up being grateful that you did? Or are you just waking up waiting for the sun to go down so you can do it again? So where's your meaning in life? What's your, what are you striving for? Where's the zest, like are you know, I don't know if that
So
makes any sense, but
Oh,
for
absolutely,
those
it
people,
does.
it does make sense for sure. But like for those people, because I think I identified one of those people at my job this week. How would you, if you see a coworker that you think is burnout, just my scenario, this person has been a nurse for longer than I've been alive, working the night shift her whole life. She comes to work, she does a wonderful job, but she's just not the happiest person to be around. Her patients say, yes, she does a great job, but is she excited about being here? Probably not. How would you start that conversation with a coworker? Like, what words would you offer them or how to start that conversation?
I would ask them how they're doing. And then when they say fine, because that's probably what they're gonna say, I'd say, really? Like, if it is fine, are you satisfied with fine? Are you really fine? How you really doing? Like, what's life look like at home? And that would be like a very probing question to somebody that's like trying to hide in plain sight, right? How's home life? Ooh, that's scary. Because I know for me, when I was in it, I lived by myself and I was able to hide a lot. And I think, and there's something to that night shift thing also, because just working night shift can cause us to be depressed for no other reason other than the fact that we're going against our circadian rhythm. Like it does so many weird things to the body. But I would just little by little start making connection. I probably wouldn't ask how home life is like in the first go, but I would start making connection and start being positive, and just seeing if it rubs off a little bit, because sometimes when people are so exhausted, they just need a little bit of permission to be positive. They just need a little bit of light, like to borrow somebody else's light. And if nobody else is offering that because they're kind of hard to be around, that can be a challenge. So maybe it's just being the light and letting them borrow it for a little bit until they can maintain it on their own.
So this podcast actually came in a great time in my life with Kevin's family, but with Kevin because as a night shifter, you wear yourself down every day. And your patients are there. They're most of the time not happy that you're waking them up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. You go to somebody's house on a call as a paramedic at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They're not having a good time. And so they're not going to be the nicest people to you. And unfortunately, finding friends on night shift is harder than you think because our schedules, people that work day shift do not realize how strenuous a night shifter schedule is. You are literally sleeping when you're off. Yeah, I have an off day, but I'm going to be off at 3 o'clock this afternoon when I'm awake. You
Yeah.
know, you're sleeping all day. And nurses, especially, I live in New England now, and the days are a lot shorter. If you're not getting sunlight and you're not getting
Mhm.
fresh air, you will literally become a hermit crab. Let me get closer to the mic to say that. You will become a hermit crab.
Mhm.
Somebody said the other day, I might cuss. I'll try not to in this, Kevin. But it was like, we're mushrooms. We're fed and kept in the dark. I'm like, yeah, that's completely true. So
Yeah.
I think that, night shifters, if you're listening to this, you really start needing to open up and open your eyes and look and see. Do a mental check in if you're
Mhm.
burnout, because that can happen within a week or two. And
Oh
if
yeah.
you're not taking your vitamin D and you're not getting outside and taking in some fresh air and touching base with your loved ones and reconnecting with your loved ones, you will burn yourself out and it can happen in a quick hurry.
Yeah, and something as simple as get some sunlight in your eyes, go breathe some fresh air for 10 minutes. We hear these things and we're so exhausted. We're like, all I want to do is crawl into bed. I don't want to pull in my driveway and sit on my porch for 10 minutes. I just want to go to bed. Okay, we hear this thing, we think it's not going to do anything because it sounds too simple. It sounds like you're not going to have any return on investment and this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard and I will never get those 10 minutes of my life back. But there's so much science behind it. And if you just understand the why we say these things ad nauseum, we say them all the time because they work. If you can do that every day for 2 weeks, you might start to notice a difference. So it's not about, doing it once and it just miraculously changes everything. It's about consistency and letting the effects compound. Just like people, they just stop taking their meds because they felt better. Well, yeah, you felt better because you were taking them. So, like, you have to keep doing the things if you want the benefits.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the
Yeah.
hospital do for sure. But, like burnout for night shifters is a big thing. I love talking about that. I love talking about ways to protect your mind
Mhm.
and protect your peace. If something is going on during the day and you're a FOMO type of person, you may have to miss it.
Yeah.
Like if that is what it takes to get sleep and refill your own cup, maybe going to the pumpkin patch can be missed. Maybe your mom can take the kids to the pumpkin patch. And especially I'm not a mom. I know Shaylee is, and she works night shift and she's amazing. And I know
Not
that
anymore.
not anymore. Yeah, she did. But like when you're a mom, I'm sure you feel that mom guilt. You're like,
Mhm.
I've got to do all these things. I've got to do all these things at work. I'm that person that people depend on, but then you're not filling your own cup up. And so I love houseplants. My husband said that I like keeping things alive that don't complain. And so I love houseplants. And, I'm like, I can usually judge how my mental health is going by how many new houseplants have entered this week. If it's been a
Mm.
rough week, I give myself a 3 allotment. So, what are some things that you do to fill up your own cup? And how do you like watch out for your own burnout, even as like writing a book and all that? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. I try to be very, very cognizant about when I am operating in a way just to simply fulfill else's expectations of me. Certainly, there are expectations that I have to meet. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. Like, there are certain things that there are people relying on me. And I think in a lot of instances, that can be very healthy to have somebody that needs you. But when I'm letting the outside noise dictate what's going on internally, that is a big red flag for me because, as we said at the top of the episode, being an overachiever is sometimes a trauma response. And ding, 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 I'm a chicken dinner winner here. So when I'm driving myself too hard, I feel that. And I force myself, as uncomfortable as it is, I force myself to slow down. For me, I pray a lot. That is my solace. That is where I can get centered and get grounded and just let Jesus remind me that he is the one, running the show. I love hot yoga. Just go in there. It's 103 degrees for an hour, burn off anything that doesn't belong. I like working out. And sometimes, truly, my guilty pleasure is just turning on some crap TV and zoning out for a little bit. I mean, it's certainly not something that I do often, but sometimes your brain just needs to like zone out, but still have some kind of stimulation. Yeah, those are, it's mostly just either moving my body or initiating stillness on purpose. So it usually has to do with the pace at which I'm moving my body.
Kevin, what do you do to gauge your own mental health, manage your burnout, and then what do you do as far as like filling your own cup back up?
So mine is very similar. I'm a prayer. I like to pray. Some of the best times is getting in the floor with my son and playing Hot Wheels and just letting the rest of the world go. The only thing that matters are those moments to me. So really that's slowing down. And then the opposite side of that is I absolutely love to be outside. I'm very much a sunshine, and like right now it's very doom and gloom here in the South in Memphis. Ceilings, I don't know if you're into flight stuff, but ceilings for us at an air service is, at a 600, 700 feet today. So the clouds are sitting right on top of the hospital. And it's just like, oh, I just want the sunshine. I just want the air. I just want the cooler weather to come, like all those things that I enjoy. So a lot of mine, and especially sitting outside on my porch, and especially late in the afternoon, late at night, Those are my quiet times that I can just still myself and look around and be grateful for all the things that I have. I'm a firm believer that a grateful heart goes a long way. When you start writing down the things that you're grateful for, you start to see how truly blessed you are. And you don't really focus on that a lot of times through a busy day, but taking a moment to sit down and just look at all the things that God's given me and just be thankful and grateful for that. It really is a mind clearing exercise that if you get into doing that on a regular basis, it makes you feel so much better, and especially right before bed, because that's when I like to do it. Right before bed, it just calms your mind and just lets you know that everything's going to be fine. Like all the things in the day kind of wash away. And then, of course, I have a very guilty pleasure of a really, and y'all are going to laugh at this because y'all are women and y'all love burning, boiling water to take a shower in. But a lukewarm shower is like, I could sit in there forever. And it just makes me feel good. It's almost, and I've got these little, those glass stickers that you can buy, and it keeps the words on there, but it peels the little part off that leaves just the words. I've had a mirror, a little like shaving mirror in my shower forever. And one of the things I've talked about on this show, and AK kind of alluded to it a little bit, self-talk is so important. So my therapist started telling me, because I was always so hard on myself. Uh, you know, the mind goes to dark places when something happens. I would constantly tell myself, you're a bad husband, you're not a good dad. The people at work don't like you. You're a bad manager, you're a bad leader. And my therapist was like, the more you say those things, the more they become true in your own world. They may not be the truth at all, but because you continually say them to yourself, they become your truth. And so I had to start using that mirror and have two or three of my favorite Bible verses up there on the mirror. And I had to start telling myself the positive things. You are loved. You are a child of God. You are a good husband. You are a good father because you focus time and attention on your family. Leadership can be hard, but at the same time, you are tackling that head on and doing a good job. Like I would just have to reassure myself. So that's why the shower thing is so important to me. Uh, the temperature of the water, I guess, is not that important of a detail. It's what I'm doing in there. That is my kind of time to reassure myself that everything is okay. That was a really long answer that probably could have been shortened, but I'm
No, I
wordy,
loved
as
it.
you know.
I loved it. So, AK, moving into solutions, just to kind of wrap up the, things. So, you wrote a book about burnout and you talk about
Mhm.
things like these new age kind of therapies that are going to deal with burnout and things like that. And we've heard some on our podcast before. Who was it? Alex Yabber?
Jabber.
Yeah, Jabber. She
Yeah,
talked
Alex
about
Jabber.
some of these tapping or maybe
Mhm.
some eye movement therapies. Talk about some of those things that you're interested in.
Yeah. So actually, my second book touches on a lot of those in ways that you could kind of use them to your advantage to work with your biology instead of against it, because so often we're primed and conditioned to stifle or human biological responses to stress and trauma so that we can do our job. The second book is called Responder Reset 99 Real Time Tactics for Frontline Regulation. And so I took 99 scenarios that first responders might deal with. I would say 75 of them, the tactical trade-off is something that works with your body. So it's like an EMDR inspired movement. So basically bilateral stimulation. So EMDR is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, but it uses bilateral stimulation, which just means both sides of the brain, both sides of the body. So different things like, sitting very still and move with only your eyes, looking all the way to the left, and then saying out loud what you see, and then looking all the way to the right, and then saying out loud what you see, and doing that two, three, four times, and kind of like resetting your nervous system. So using things like that, using things like proprioception, which is fancy way of saying like just sensory input on the skin. So like when you get a good squeeze, like a good hug, that feels good because that's proprioception. Like a weighted blanket is the same thing. So lots of different things like that to kind of start to micro process the tapping you mentioned. So tapping on your sternum, tapping on different areas, just little ways to micro process the stress in the moment so that it doesn't get suppressed and then snowball and become a much bigger thing. And I think sometimes that's all it takes is just that little pressure valve to not just shove it down with the rest, but actually to move your body through it just a little bit so that the little things don't become big things. So I don't know if that answers your question. There's so
Yeah.
many
Yes.
different modalities and alternative methods out there right now for trauma and stress regulation. And the more we learn and the more the research and science starts to or continues to evolve, if we're going to survive the times, we really have to evolve with it. And that's what I'm trying to help people do.
So I learn new things every time I do the podcast. And so I'm really interested in your eye movement.
Mhm.
Is that something that you can do while you're at work? Like, how would you do that? Like, if you're feeling kind of stressed and you need to go have a moment for yourself and just kind of reset your nervous system, what
Mhm.
would that look like? You look all the way to the left, say the things you see, look all the way to the right, say the things you see, and then what like comes after that?
By the book.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I
I'm
can't
gonna
tell you
remember it.
I don't remember what tactic that is, what number that is, but that's just one of the many tactics, and you kind of, like you just breathe through it, and what it does is it refocuses, and recenters you. So I would say I do wanna put a caveat and a disclaimer in there that like, that is not EMDR therapy.
Mm,
EMDR should not be self-administered. That is something that is to be done with a licensed, trained mental health clinician. But little things like the bilateral stimulation can help to regulate you in the moment. So they bring you back into your body and kind of stop the spiral of whatever you're thinking about. And it doesn't have to be just eye movement either. It can be tapping on one leg and then the other and alternating back and forth or maybe like your shoulders or whatever the case is. So walking walking is the best bilateral stimulation there is. That's how EMDR was discovered. So just little things like that help to move the stress through you. Um and I'm trying to think of other ways to do that. But yeah, there's lots of those variations in the book for sure.
That's awesome. And with your one-on-one coaching and, things like that, why do you think that it's so important for any approach with a first responder going to therapy to be trauma informed?
Oh my gosh. Because even if you haven't even if you don't feel like you've experienced a critical incident or something traumatic, we work and operate in trauma-rich environments. So it is just swirling all around us. It's in the air. Like, even if you're showing up after a domestic, whether you're the cop, whether you're an EMT, the trauma just happened. It's still there, right? You're dealing with it secondarily. So we don't realize how much it permeates us even if we weren't the one to experience it firsthand. Even in our trainings, I feel like, when you go through the police academy or I don't know what the other trainings are like, but you're just exposed to so much and you just witnessing human suffering, like if you see somebody that's in pain and agony as a fellow human, that can't not affect you, right? Even if you're not, even if it's just they're screaming because their stomach hurts, like it still affects you and you go cold after a while because you have to numb out to be able to do it. But um I think having a clinician that understands the environment and the culture and how we typically deal with it is absolutely imperative because trauma is something that is not it doesn't just stay in the brain. It is a full body. We experience trauma with all 5 senses. And so people really need to understand that it's not a mental health condition, it is a health condition. Like
mhm.
PTS is a full body thing. And so if you're gonna go to a clinician as a first responder, they minimum need to be trauma informed.
I love that mental health is becoming more accessible
Mhm.
to every, healthcare worker, first responder, whatever. What are your thoughts on incorporating some of these, higher to entry level things like a therapist who specializes in the eye movement training and things like that? What would you say to maybe some supervisors or managers or maybe healthcare companies companies in general about adding those things to like their, part of their benefits.
That would be incredible because if they, everybody's short staffed these days. And so when you invest in your people, your retention is going to go up. Your performance and the output and the productivity of your people is going to go up. And the best organic and free recruitment is solid retention and happy people. So if you are burning people out left and right because you're not taking care of them and you're short staffed, is that a hole you're going to have to climb out of? Yeah. But one way to do that is to further invest in your people, not pull resources. It's give them more, support them more, and then you'll see the return on investment. So you're going to have to front load it a little bit. And it might take a couple years to truly see that trajectory. But yeah, I mean, even if they don't have the budget for it, find it. They find money for all kinds of other things that are not necessary. We don't need to rewrap every single vehicle and redo all the decals just because we feel like it. Maybe put that money toward some mental health for your
Yeah.
people, they usually have the ability to find money for all sorts of things. So why not that?
Ancillary things.
Mhm.
So, besides the things that we've already talked about, what would be something easy that you think supervisors, management, these department leaders of first responders could implement to help lessen burnout, anxiety, and PTSD in the job setting? Because I don't think pizza parties are doing it.
No, they're not. I think the biggest thing is to truly connect with your people, truly get to know your people. The number one indicator of how well you're going to bounce back from a critical incident is the support system that you have before that incident even happens. So maybe it's implementing every month, come into my office, or maybe it's not you come into my office every month. Let's go grab a coffee and sit down for 20 minutes and catch up and how's the wife, how's the kids, how are you feeling, what's going on, and actually caring, because in this line of work we see through the bullshit. You have to sit down and actually be curious, actually give a crap about the person behind the employee, right? Like they're there to serve a role. They're not there to serve you. They're there to serve a role, but also there's a person there. So connecting with that human being, and um, people might be hesitant to really open up because if you're a supervisor, they're going to be like, oh, I got to say the right thing. I don't want to lose my job or whatever. But the more you can do that consistently, and they see that you're not blowing smoke and that you actually mean it, the more the connections will actually be made, the trust will be there, the support will be there, and the retention and the recruitment and all those things will follow, and those will just be amazing byproducts.
And what's the one thing that you would say to the first responder, police officer, healthcare worker that's secretly going through maybe burnout, PTSD, anxiety that may be watching our podcast right now?
You are not alone, and it is not selfish to take care of you.
And I think that's one of the statements as we start to close down. That's one of the statements that I've heard you say numerous times. There's no shame in getting help. And I
Yeah.
think in our line of work, there's this stigma and this kind of unannounced shame that kind of goes along with the thought of getting help. So I appreciate that message that there's no shame in getting help. And that's a very empowering statement. Did you feel that shame, as you started to kind of move toward dealing with your own mental health? And have you seen that shame in other responders?
Yeah. Well, when I left full-time law enforcement, I told them that I was leaving to go further my education. I didn't tell them that I woke up every morning wanting to die. I wasn't gonna be brutally honest, even after I was leaving. Like I wasn't scared of losing the job
Mhm.
because I was leaving the job. So even then, I felt the shame around it, and it took me years to be able to truly talk about what was experiencing. And I see it all the time. I mean, I see it when I go train at agencies and I'm talking and people are putting their head down and they're squirming and, and I've spoken to thousands of people at this point. So, I'm able to recognize that it's what I'm saying is making them uncomfortable. and they're feeling a little too seen, and they're like, I don't want anybody to see, and so I see it all the time, and there's definitely a hesitation to talk about it and bring it forward because we think we have like this spotlight on us. We think that we're the only ones because everybody's out here masking. So we're masking, they're masking, and so it makes us feel alone. But if we can just talk about it, you find that people actually lean in and they're like, "Hey, me too."
Uh-huh.
And then you're like, "So we're all just crispy?" Yes.
Let's find
Yeah.
a therapist together.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, as always, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
having me.
for allowing us to have a conversation with you. Tell us about all the places that we can find you and tell us just a little bit about your new book. That has it released yet, or is it still
Yes.
in pre-order phase?
Nope. Amazon
Okay.
does what they want.
Okay.
And so it is out in the wild. And yeah, so I have Beat the Burnout and Responder Reset, but the easiest place to find me is just akdozanti.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, but the hub is akdozanti.com, and that'll take you anywhere you need to go.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for being with us. And
you.
Makayla, you can lead us out with our phrase we say every single show. So hit it, and we'll end here.
Be safe, take care of your mind, and we will talk soon. I'd like for you guys to leave a comment of the things you do to fill up your own cup. And as always, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, where you can see our beautiful faces. And we will talk soon. Love you guys.
You've been listening to A Silent War Within. If this episode resonated, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Remember, you're not alone and your well-being matters. It's time to end this silent war.